Hello everybody, my name is KingStix, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to play Ekko like a pro in 18 minutes. I'm going to be breaking it all down. The runes, items, ganks, tips, and tricks. So normally on Ekko, you actually want to start your W. You'll take a lot less damage when farming your camp at level 1. In this case, the enemies did invade us. If the enemies do invade, or if you are invading, normally it's best to have your Q. It's a really easy to land slow, and it's your main source of damage. We pick up a kill, but we don't have enough gold to pick up a Dark Sill or an Amplifying Tome. And if I back at this point, I'm going to be late for my camp, so I'm going to go ahead and just stay. We do have Ravenous Hunter, so we should be healing off of our camps a little bit. I don't recommend taking Relentless Hunter on Ekko, particularly in the early and mid game. It will hurt your clears and you'll be lower on health, making it easier for the enemy jungler to solo you. I also don't recommend taking Dark Harvest. It's been nerfed a lot, and in general, if you fall behind early with it, you won't have much impact in the game. Normally, you'd be using your W to stun it and getting a shield right here at level 1, but in this case, I have my Q, so I'm going to make sure my Q hits it on the way out and back on the way in, moving in between each auto attack. In this case, I take my W at level 2, but normally you'll be taking your Q at level 2 and then setting up a full clear. Ekko clears his camps faster than most junglers. He's probably in the top 10 percentile. Setting up a full clear is normally the most advantageous thing to do since other junglers can't match it very well. Ekko will remain fairly high HP, so even if someone invades you, they won't have much of a chance of actually soloing you. With that being said, conqueror champions like Warwick or Lee Sin can solo you. However, with how much mobility you have, if you choose not to die, there's really no way they could possibly chase you down. Your Q has a pretty big spread. If you toss it at a multi-monster camp, as long as they're running towards you, the outgoing and returning part of it should hit the full thing. Something also important to keep in mind is your passive stacks can apply on multiple enemies, whether it be minions, monsters, or champions at once. So if you hit the full raptor camp or the full wolf camp with your Q, if you use just one auto on the small ones before your stacks wear off, you'll apply your full passive and thus take the camp a lot faster. This will also help you to take less damage. As you can see, as I'm clearing my wolf camp, I have basically full HP, so realistically, even if I did walk into a Warwick who was waiting in the bush, he would have no chance of actually killing me. While clearing your camps, it's normally best to use your spells whenever they come up. If you do have the option, it's usually best to time your stun to where you take at least one hit from the monster and then your stun goes off. That way you can heal off of your health regen and your hunter talisman healing while the monster is stunned. If you're full HP and you stun the monster, you're not taking full advantage of your stats and your items. Your E is basically an auto attack resetter, so if you are trying to clear your camps efficiently, it's usually best to auto attack and then E rather than just opening up with an E to begin with. Especially if you're clearing a multi-monster camp, typically when you first throw out your Q, you then open up with an auto attack, because if you E too deep in on it, you'll be missing most of the camp on the return path of your Q. At this point, you want to look for a gank or take the scuttle. Since the scuttle was already gone, I didn't really want to look for a gank since Malphite wasn't very gankable. In this case, Lee Sin already rushed down the scuttle and I see him going top. He doesn't seem to notice me, or he knows he can't 1v1 me because I am a level up on it. As he goes in for a gank, I dash over the wall and toss out my W. I flashed to try to get in range of my E, but I flashed just slightly too late, so my E wore off. I also couldn't make use of my W since Malphite and 𝐒𝐿𝐻𝐿 fought in place. Lee Sin is now out of position. I'm going to stay on top of him, Q him at point blank range, and then E into him. It's very important on Ekko that you move in between your auto attacks, otherwise you'll miss out on heaps of damage. It's super important in these situations that you land your full passive. If you're only ever getting the 2 marks and never fully proccing your passive, you'll never have the kill pressure to secure kills. Whenever you have a successful gank, or the enemy jungler dies, or you see the enemy jungler somewhere else on the map as Ekko, you want to look to take their camps. In this case, Malphite's pinned under his turret. We just killed Lee Sin. I help 𝐒𝐿𝐻𝐿 push, so now I'm clear and free to invade Lee Sin's jungle. Use my W, my Q, my E, and my smite, and I'm already back to fairly high HP. Remember, Ekko is a fast clearer jungler, so don't shy away from taking camps like golems and raptors. They are your best friend, and it's how you'll maintain consistent leads over most junglers. Lee Sin comes back to return gank. In an ideal situation, 𝐒𝐿𝐻𝐿 would have dragged both of them into my bush over here, but instead he goes full ham mode, so I can't land a free W. If you're in a bush and you throw out your W, the enemies can't really see it or hear it until it's already dropping on top of them, so in this case I don't get a chance to land it, so I just throw my Q on Malphite, dash over the wall and smack him. I proc my full passive on him, giving me huge damage and a nice speed up. Remember, Ekko's E can go over every single small and medium wall. Unless it is the top thickest wall in the game, you can get over it. So even on these thick top walls, you can jump over any part of that and secure kills or help in a gank. Your first back on Ekko, you want to look to complete as much of your jungle item as possible. Remember, we are taking the free boot, so we won't need to waste any gold on that, allowing us to hit our full jungle power spike much faster. For the gold cost, jungle items are by far the strongest item in the game, which is why you have to have smite to even be able to purchase one. If you can afford it, you also want to get a control ward on your first back and make sure you have a sweeper lens at this point as well. Ideally, you want to lay your ward down and get a sweeper lens before you start your first jungle camp. This game didn't turn out that way since the enemies invaded, things got awkward, and I got forced to be stuck with my warding totem until my first back. I also picked up a dark seal because I had an awkward amount of gold. I couldn't finish my jungle item and I couldn't build another part of it since I already had all the parts. I just didn't have enough to finish it. So I did pick up a dark seal. It's a great item buy on Ekko, especially if you are ahead. It allows you to scale and get even more control over the game. After your first back, unless there is an absolutely free gank on the map, you want to start up a full jungle clear route like an Evelyn or Dr. Mundo would. So you'd want to run down to your golems, go to your raptors, wolves, and then gromp, a full linear clear route. This will help you to hit your level 6 faster, and it will normally give you a consistent way to build a lead over the enemy jungler since Ekko does clear faster than most junglers on average. With that being said, if you see the enemy jungler on the map or if there's a free gank, you can mix up your pathing. So if Lee Sin showed bot, I could easily push into his jungle and wipe out his camps, or if there was a free gank, you can move off of your linear path and take it. For example, here I could have continued upwards into Lee Sin's jungle and taken his golems. Instead, I toss out my W, E into the Talia, and then smack her with a cube. Just because you're on a linear path doesn't mean you can't break it. A linear jungle path is just a solid standard procedure for playing as a power clear jungler like Ekko, since you can build up consistent leads with it, and that way you're not just standing around doing nothing. My ultimate is up, I have a level and gold lead, I'm looking for a fight here, I have all my abilities up, I wait for Pyke to engage, I drop my W out in front of the enemies, E into the Nautilus, land the stun, Q him, and stay on top of them with my auto attacks. Ekko is super dangerous once he is level 6, and in the early and mid game in particular, he is a all-around powerhouse, which is why he's the strongest #1 jungler right now in League of Legends. They still need to give him a proper nerf. He has a really high ban rate, and whenever he does get through, particularly in higher elo, it's a bit of a game ender. With that being said, his late game is objectively weak unless you do go Dark Harvest, and even then, if the enemy team has a lot of CC, it is very difficult for Ekko to operate since he is melee and he is squishy, he falls apart very quickly. But in the early and mid game, he's pretty much untouchable. He has so many options, whether it's clearing, 1v1ing weaker junglers, chase downs, escapes, you name it, Ekko's got it. The only thing Ekko doesn't have is range attacks, but since his E is such a big dash and flash auto attack, he doesn't really need the range autos to be able to secure kills or hit people who are running away. Lee Sin's watching me, I thought he was in the bush, so I immediately E and Q, assuming he'd have slow reaction time or be standing closer to the front of the bush. He had good reaction time and he was standing towards the back, so I couldn't really get on top of him. I hit him with my E, blue smite him, but it's just not enough to stay on top of him. I do have a really good level advantage over him, and item advantage and have vision. I drop my W on his escape route, E him point blank range, smack him with the Q. Then I try to stay on top of him and auto him. The Adderall's kick in and I see Malphite for like 1/10 of a second. I dodge his ultimate with my ultimate. As my E comes up, I hit Lee Sin with my Q and then E into him. Remember, we can dash over Talia wall here, so as our E comes up, we don't need to panic. We hit Talia over the wall with our Q. I use my E to get to my stun shield, and then I smite the red buff to heal, then finishing Malphite off with a point blank Q. Oftentimes, it's best to use your Q after your E on Ekko. It makes it 100% free land, because if you first E on top of them, your point blank range, they can't dodge it since it's right on top of them. They can't juke it, and you land the slow on your Q for free. At that point, you can just auto them, then you'll have a full proc passive, and then you can stay on top of them and land the second part of your Q for free most of the time. Remember, it's spells and auto attacks, so all you need is one E, one Q at point blank range, and then one auto attack. That's 3. You got the movement speed bonus, then once again, landing the second part of your Q is child's play. The main thing you need to understand about Ekko that makes him very simple to play is landing his passive. It's 3 procs, guys. Any attack, any spell will apply a proc to any enemy. Once you get comfortable with landing your full passive, landing your spells in general becomes very simple. Alright, it's go time. You're behind the enemies. You know you can win the fight. Use your W to cut off their escape route. The next thing is using your Q from a distance. In a case like this, using your Q from a distance for spacing and to zone people off is fine, as long as you know you can land at least the second part of it on the person you use your E on. In this case, I stun the Nautilus, I toss out my Q, I hit the Senna with it, and then I use the second part of the Q to hit the Nautilus, and I trigger my full passive on it. Now I'm on top of the Senna with the passive I got from hitting Nautilus, so I'm super fast while I'm attacking Senna. I then hit my passive on her, which keeps me fast as well, and I just blow her up. She never really had a chance. I didn't have to use my ultimate, and it all stemmed from cutting off their escape route with W, zoning the Senna, and hitting Nautilus with the second part of my Q, which is very easy since I'm being on top of him, getting my passive, and when you're moving fast, it's very easy to land the second part of your Q. That's something you need to realize. I saw Lee Sin. I didn't realize Taliyah was down here, so I was trying to bait Lee Sin out, and then I was going to ult. I ended up walking into the Taliyah knockup, and I had really bad reaction times. I could have E'd out of it, I could have flashed out of it, I could have ultied. Any of those 3 things would have saved my life. Your core items on Ekko are normally going to be Proto Belt and Lichbane. In this game, since I got early stacks on my Dark Seal, it just made sense to get the Majayas. Even though I did lose a lot of stacks off of inting bot lane to the Taliyah in the bush, I'm still getting a lot of value out of it, and there's no reason to sell it at this point. If you are really far ahead, you don't have to get Proto Belt. It's not essential. If you are having issues closing the gap on the enemies due to their comp, then you will want to get it. But if you're not having issues closing the distance and you are ahead, it is not essential. In my opinion, Lichbane is far more essential since it gives you more damage. With that being said, Lichbane is far more expensive. So in a normal styled game, you would normally want to get Proto Belt into Lichbane since it's much more affordable. You can get it, have that power spike, and get pressure into the game. And when I say normal styled game, I just mean if you're not fed, then it's normally the better early option. That brings me back to a play that we made while I was talking about Lichbane and Proto Belt. When you're going in for dives on Ekko, you typically want to wait till you're level 6, that way you don't die, and you want to use your W to cut off the enemy's escape route. If they try to escape, you'll stun him, and if they don't try to escape, well, it should be a free kill regardless. Then you're going to want to use your E to close the distance, hit them with your E, and then Q them at point blank range. Here I throw out my Q, so I end up missing the first part, but I use my E to close the distance, blue smite him, and then I easily land the second part of my Q since I'm behind him. I continue to auto attack him the whole time, and then when I get low enough on health to where it's very uncomfortable and I'm probably going to die, I press R, and there you have it, I'm back to nearly full HP. If I didn't ult, I think I would have died because of the Senna ult and the turret's extra repeat damage. Also, the main reason why I queued early is I wasn't sure if he had ult or not, and I didn't want him to one-shot my Aatrox before I got there, so I wanted to throw out that early slow just in case he went aggressive on my Aatrox. Once again, in ganks, you normally want to use your W to cut off the enemy's escape route, and make sure you actually step into it, that way you get the shield. I hit Senna with my Q, and I E right into her. They start to CC chain me, so I do have to use my flash to close the distance. You do need to be careful if you're ganking without your ultimate on Ekko. If you are fighting 1v2, if they chain CC you, you're very squishy, and you'll just kind of die. So I use my flash, finish off the Senna. Nautilus is up against the wall, auto him, and then throw out my Q, E to stay on top of him, and then finish him off. Lee Sin's only level 7 here, so I'm not really afraid of him, but nothing comes out of it because he's too scared to actually go in on me. Assuming you've been playing the early game properly with power farming, ganks, and invading, you should have a consistent lead by the mid game, making sure you take every dragon you can get your hands on. Once again, guys, Ekko isn't the best scaling jungler in the game. In the true late game, he has a bit of a fall off point, so it's important that you take as many dragons as you can. Ekko also has really good single target damage because of his passive, so if you are level 5 and up, feel free to solo a dragon. It shouldn't be too hard. You also have a really good escape tool with your E, so if someone does come, you can always get away. After killing enemy champions, try to smash the whole minion wave with your Q while it is still vertical. You'll clear the whole thing very quickly, making it easy for you and your teammates to break the turret. As you get more and more fed and get more and more damage, you can do more spicy things. Use your W to cut off the enemy's escape route. You can E over the wall. Try to use your Q after you land your E, that way you know it will land. Once I make contact with Malphite, I Q him at point blank range to finish him off, and then Lee Sin is nice enough to give me a first class ticket out of the turret range. Even if Lee Sin didn't ult me away, I could always just use my ultimate or perhaps dash away when it came off a cooldown. I can't stress it enough in ganks just how powerful Ekko's wall dash is. It needs to be nerfed. He can go over almost any wall, allowing him to get behind enemies in the same way a Rek'Sai would use her dash in a very deep styled gank. This is very unhealthy with how strong Ekko is against monster camps. In fact, his passive does double damage against monsters, so they basically engineered him to be a jungler very artificially, and he has such good mobility that he can go over virtually any wall, allowing him to gank from so many positions that if the Ekko is creative and has a general idea of how to use his abilities, he's a massive threat. It's really all about building up leads in the early and mid game. That way you're allowed to do aggressive plays. Since you are squishy and you are melee, if you can't build yourself any kind of lead, it will be difficult for you to find proper engages on the enemies without instantly dying or having to use your ultimate before you can pick a kill. Even if you are fed on Ekko, you need to remember that you're very squishy, so if your ultimate is down or you don't have Hourglass, you need to be mindful of enemies who have CC, because if they chain CC you, you'll get bursted down very quickly. So make sure before you do anything too spicy, you have ultimate or an Hourglass to avoid those immediate hard damage CC spells, like a Malphite ult. In the mid and late game, if you find yourself having trouble against the enemy CC, it's okay to set up a split push as long as none of them can solo you. You have a lot of wave clear and a lot of damage against turrets with your Lich Bane. Taliyah oversteps, I toss my W out behind her, E on top, and then Q at point blank range. My passive proc gives me enough speed to easily get out of the situation. When enemies are chasing you, pay close attention to your ultimate's ghost, that way you know when to ult to maybe get a cheeky kill. Here, Senna's on top of it, I press R, Q at point blank range, and E on top of her. Once again, getting a full passive proc makes me very fast so I can get out of the situation. I nearly pick up the kill on Nautilus. If I would have been faster to blue smite him, I would have gotten it. And that's really all there is to Ekko. You start out with a full jungle clear. At the end of your clear, you look for scuttle, for a gank, or for an invade. In ganks, you use your W to cut off their escape route. Preferably use your W whenever they don't have vision of you, that way they don't hear you use it. You typically want to E on top of them and then Q them, that way you guaranteed land your Q. You're primarily going to be focusing on landing your full proc passive in general. Landing it will also make it very easy for you to land the second part of your Q when it's returning to you, since you can position around the enemies, go through them, or anything of that nature. Once you activate your passive, playing Ekko is a lot like playing Singed. You're faster than everyone, you're moving through them, and there's not a whole lot they can do to combat it. Build towards your jungle item as your first item, and only go to gank when you know for a fact you'll get a kill. If you don't have ultimate or Hourglass, be careful of going in for dive since you are very squishy. The only times you're going to use your ultimate is either to negate life-ending damage CC or to pick enemies who are foolish enough to chase you. In general though, you won't be using your ultimate too much unless any of those specific situations occur. Ekko Jungle is currently the best jungler. I highly recommend you play him before he gets nerfed. With that being said, he does have a high ban rate, so you will have to keep your eye out for when to pick him rather than just picking him every single time. And that is going to wrap up this Ekko Jungle guide on how to play Ekko like a pro in 18 minutes. If you enjoyed this video and you want to support the channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.